Welcome back to the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Hernandez. Today, we have a very special guest from Axis Academy, and we are super excited to share all about what they do. So, we want to welcome Axis Academy here. And there's something really cool about this academy because there has been so much talk, especially in the homeschooling world, about okay, well, do we or do we not use an umbrella school? How do we actually homeschool? What is it that we do for just everyday life? How do we go about doing that? And the greatest thing about this is that Access Academy can help with all of that. So here we have Todd with Access Academy to share all about what they do. Welcome, Todd.
Well, thank you, Tiffany. Appreciate you having me on your program today.
Yes, absolutely. So can you share with us a little bit about how you got started, why you got started, what you're doing now? You've got so much going on.
Certainly, certainly. So we started our homeschooling journey when our children were in public school. We have three children, and two of them had begun, and in second and fourth grade, our two oldest, we were facing some repeated difficulties just with helping them feel successful in that environment. And it really wasn't working, as many parents find as a struggle, really wasn't working out for our family. And so we had considered it. Of course, my wife did the bulk of the legwork. And we decided it was time to pull them from that environment. And I thought, well, for as much work as we're putting into this process when they're at home, I think we can probably accomplish just as much of a success at home. And so we decided to pull them out at that point, and we kind of began the homeschooling journey at that point. And our third child was just entering kindergarten that next year, so she was homeschooled all the way through. And so, just challenges that we faced, and I speak to many parents that run into very similar issues, whether it's bullying or just the environment itself is not working well for them. And so, certainly sharing a lot of those experiences with a lot of families that come along. And so, during the process, we kind of recognized towards the end of the process that we really enjoyed talking to families and kind of working through some of the things that they were experiencing, encouraging them to consider it. And so, as our kids rounded out the end of their schooling career, we kind of looked at each other and said, how we don't feel like we're completely disconnected from this environment, and we really enjoyed working with the family. So we began the process of exploring beginning our own umbrella, being here in Tennessee. And so those, the primary two ways to homeschool are to basically do it completely on your own and registering with your local county and following whatever guidelines that they offer. And the other way to primarily homeschool is through an umbrella. And so we offer that as a service. And what that allows us to do is still give the parent the freedom to homeschool primarily as they see fit. And then we become the school of record at that point, and we communicate with the state or the county as necessary to just confirm that the student is enrolled and that we are helping to manage their educational process. And so those are basically the two primary methods that are available to Tennesseans.
Great, right. And we're talking about the two major ones because there are like four different options, but generally the other options are not really homeschool. They're actually like school at home, but it's public school. So there's, a little bit of discrepancy there about who you're actually registered under.
There absolutely is. There was a little confusion a few years ago because the some of the counties were proposing the public school at home and referring to it as homeschooling. And so that helped create a little bit of confusion a few years back during that process. And they've kind of sort of hijacked the phrase homeschool during that
Yes.
process to mean public school at home. And so, of course, that process fits, some families just fine. And, as an organization, we're not necessarily looking to say, everyone should homeschool and you should use us. While sure, we would certainly love to help support families in that endeavor. We just ask them what their needs are. And sometimes we say, the online public school is your best bet because we have a temporary situation. We want to reintegrate them back into public school shortly after we get over this hurdle. And so sometimes the going in and out of a homeschool environment is a little more difficult than just continuing in that path with the public school at home. And so, we kind of try to work our best to make sure we understand what they're actually looking for and what their needs are.
Right. Okay, so you mentioned a few things, umbrella school program, and then working with the state directly, registering underneath and doing a what would be like an individualized program or like a on your own. What would you say is the benefits for going with an umbrella school versus just going it on your own and registering through the state, like your Department of Education in your county?
Well, the primary benefit that seems to be to speak to most families is uh, it, a lot of families find themselves maybe in a conflict situation with the local county, and there's just some hurdles that they are no longer interested in pursuing. And so one of the benefits is we're able to take on that communication. While we certainly encourage the family to make a notification that says we are unenrolling and we're enrolling in a private school, which is basically what an umbrella is, that offer a homeschool program. And at that point, we take over communication. We request any records necessary, and we make that notification confirmation with the school system to say we are now helping to manage that education process. And fortunately, the Tennessee laws are very beneficial and to families that are looking for that. And so at that point, because we are registered as that type of school, Category 4 private school, that we are then able to manage that. And the state at that point does take a hands-off approach to the education as long as they maintain the records and the attendance requirements that they have.
Right. So, generally speaking, the benefit for going with the umbrella program is the more hands-off approach, but also the umbrella program will manage all of your attendance that you need to report to the state. I just had one of our homeschool friends in this situation where she was doing the independent, it's called an independent homeschool option, and she was doing the independent option. She had turned her paperwork in 2 or 3 times. They kept asking her for it, or she kept having to turn it in because they couldn't find it. They couldn't find it. And they called her and gave her a letter stating that she was truant and that she was going to
Right.
have to report to the court and show proof of, what's been going on and all this extra nonsense because they lost her paperwork. She called, they quickly found the paperwork, but I'm saying, this is her first year homeschooling. And of course, she's freaking out because, oh my gosh, I'm going to be considered truant if I don't get this paperwork in, but I've turned the paperwork in. So why did they not have it? And there's all this back and forth. Let me tell you, the stress relief of being under an umbrella program and knowing that they have the records, they can then go back and pull the records and say, no, they are on our record, and not having to worry so much about the state coming after you directly. So there is a little bit of
Mhm.
barrier there, which is such a huge relief. I was surprised because we were here for a year and I was still under Florida because we still were residents in Florida before we moved here. So obviously we didn't have the truancy issue, but I'm like, man, I've been here, probably should move over to an umbrella program or something, but we never got a call. And so it's interesting, they're starting to crack down a lot quicker from what they used to, I think, because they've lost so much census on students. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit. Um, but
Yeah, I can touch just briefly on it. There are, you know, from a public education perspective, I mean, there are tons of fantastic school teachers out there. Both my mom and my wife's mother are retired public school teachers. So, teachers a lot of times get a very bad rap, but they are having to
yeah,
work within the environment they're in.
yeah,
And the same goes for administration. And so there are plenty of counties that I work with that have just fantastic LEA representatives, which is your local education authority, and they are the person or body in each of the schools that is responsible for those families that are homeschooling or outside of the public education process. And so there are many that work well with me. If I forget a piece of paperwork, they're calling me and not the parent, and I get that to them or whatever's necessary. And so, but some counties are known for playing hardball. And I think that's just an individual person, but by and large, we have pretty good success across Tennessee. And it does when that conflict comes up, it is that quite a bit of relief when we can take on the brunt of that, or if the calls are coming, they come to us and not the family. So
Right, right. Um, that is probably one of the biggest things that, parents worry about when they choose homeschools that, oh, well, this is a lot of responsibility. This is a lot of extra paperwork. And, we're already overloaded with all the paperwork of actually doing the schoolwork and everything. So if you can like have one less thing on your plate, I highly recommend an umbrella program. So share a little bit about what else Access does, because it's not only the paperwork side of things. You mentioned that you help families with their homeschool plan, figuring out curriculum, all that kind of helpful benefits that come along with it. Can you share a little bit about what that does for
certainly.
families?
Well, we at the same time that we were exploring starting an umbrella program, we had certainly a house full of curriculum, and so we
Right.
actually started a homeschool curriculum bookstore for about a year. And so we had accumulated thousands more books. And so we have quite a bit of a resource pool for families that are looking. If they say, hey, we need a math book, we may have one that's available. And so we do have a lot of used curriculum for sale, in addition to just my wife spent a lot of time researching a lot of curriculum. And so between her and some of our other advisors that are just available for families, people can call and say, I've tried this Saxon math thing and it is just a monster. It's very complicated. It's not explained well. And I sound like I'm dinging Saxon. It's a fine material, but that's a lot of feedback that we get from families if they are looking at that particular textbook. And so we are able to say, well, have you tried this and have you tried that? Because we've tried several of them and we have some resources in families and some of our administration that have that experience and can help guide families.
Okay.
And so also as time progressed, you talked about some of the other things that we offer. Um, we have started an online academy. And so that is basically where we provide the curriculum and you enroll in that program. And it is online based. And so it is still self-paced. The parent can help manage that. But they're not searching for the books and they're not trying to find things that work. They're not trying to do the lesson planning. And that's sometimes also a big hurdle. If you just say, I want to go to the local bookstore, or we have a local McKay's used bookstore here in our area, and there's lots of homeschool curriculum. Some of our local Christian bookstores also have some curriculum available, and so that is exactly up my wife's alley. And many people are really interested in looking at books. But when you start with the book and you're looking at the sections that are in there, how are you going to manage breaking the lessons apart? That's the lesson planning. And so all of that gets included in our online program, and the lesson planning is done, and the student sits down for a day's work and says, you have this math lesson to do, and this language lesson, and this science lesson. And maybe tomorrow you have two of those and one of those, but it does all of the planning for you. And that's the big relief for a lot of families that simply don't have the time to manage that. They're able to maybe field some questions. Hey, mom, I'm stuck in science. I don't understand this. Well, let's sit down after supper and let's talk about that. And so that program is becoming beneficial, and we've launched that just a couple of years ago, and some new families are starting to enjoy taking advantage of that.
The online space has gotten some flack for too much screen time. And I know we've talked about this previously, because I'm of one of those that's like, okay, not too much screen time, but we also need to be up with the technologies because they are coming fast, and we do need to be able to understand what's coming, and they need to have the knowledge of how to use it. Can you share a little bit about that, especially like with your program, how it works?
Certainly. Well, just to clarify, our online program starts at third grade, and so
Okay.
prior to that, a lot of screen time for younger kids is really not the best, and by and large, they're getting plenty of screen time outside of the educational process. One of the factors
Yes.
that kind of comes into it for us is a lot of families are uh, I hate to use the phrase knee-jerk reaction, but sometimes there's just an event that happens in the public school setting that just becomes critical mass. And they're like, I've got to make a change now, and they need to start something tomorrow. And
Mm-hmm.
we were telling families, well, if you want to homeschool, you need to kind of research some curriculum. You need to know the learning styles of your student. And so all of a sudden, there's this giant mountain of things that need to be done. And parents are like, I don't have time for that. I need to change tomorrow. And so we were exploring some options because they do offer also the online academy, as you said, for the public school system. In this essence, it's no different in that, yes, they would go from a classroom setting to a full online, work day on the computer. And so part of our goal too is in transition. So this
Mm-hmm.
is an option that we wanted available for families that needed to transition. Maybe online is great. Maybe they travel quite a bit, and so online is really it. You don't have space for books or things like that, and so online is maybe the only option. So, but as time progresses, and especially as the kids get older, there's extracurriculars, and and we even make that recommendation. Our fee for enrollment is for up to 6 courses for each of the years that the student is enrolled. And that we also start to recommend, especially as they are looking at the time that they're spending, picking a few of those classes and maybe picking a textbook-based approach for one, making sure we're doing PE type activities and things outside of screen time, because you're absolutely right. Screen time for the all day, every day is not a solution. And a lot of times we will recommend that families say, we're going to pick 2 days a week will be the screen time work, and the other days is going to be non-screen time work. And so those are definitely approaches that we recommend every family consider. Because as life progresses, more and more people will be glued to a screen in their job all day long, and so working to avoid that during those elementary and early learning years is super beneficial.
Right, right. There's a lot of research coming out that share about attention span and screen times and all these other things, which we won't get into on this conversation. But what you're really essentially telling everyone is a hybrid program is really ideal. Few days on the
Yeah,
computer, few
absolutely.
days off the computer. And that hybrid element is really where the flexibility of homeschooling is vibrant and it's thriving because you have all these options. You can really tailor it to whatever the student needs. If they have those extracurricular activities that take up unusual times, then you can fit in the schoolwork on the computer as needed or in the books as needed. And that's really where it benefits the whole family.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I didn't say in the transition, part of our initial discussions with family is, our primary goal is really just to help families take ownership of their child's education. And
Yes.
if that means, I have to work, I have to send my kid to public school, that's okay. That's not the problem. It's that it's so easy to stay disconnected from what's actually happening in the child's learning process. And so if you
Yes.
have to send your child to public school, there's no looking down on that. It is
No.
it is what you need at this time, at this stage in your life, and maybe that's what's needed for their entire educational career. But once you start to take on this different mindset that says, I'm in charge of what's happening with my child's learning, then other opportunities and other things become apparent to you that maybe you didn't consider before. And so,
Right.
if we transition someone from public school to straight online, there's still that ownership aspect. And so, you still need to be aware of what your child is learning. Here is what we believe, and here's what you're reading, and it's giving you opportunities to have discussions about things you may not normally
Conversation.
be able to discuss. And
Right.
so, that's kind of what we help to propose to our families.
I'm glad you mentioned about the public school element in that it's really the parent's choice. We have a book coming up, a book project coming up. I'll have to talk more about that in a little bit, but it's all about it's your child, so it's your choice. And if that means that you are in the predicament where they have to go to school, maybe you don't really want them to be in that situation, but that's what you're left with. Maybe it's a court order, maybe there's a separation or something, and the other spouse, wants them to be in the school system and you don't have the opportunity to homeschool, it doesn't mean you can't be involved. And so I'm hoping this book will actually bridge that gap of all this animosity between, well, we're homeschooling and we're better, we're public schooling and you're wasting time, and all this bickering, right? Like, we're all parents wanting the best for our children, and we don't want to be told that we're wrong when
Right.
we make those choices. And it's really not about a right or wrong decision. It's about what is your values, what is your goal for your child, what is your vision for your family. Those things need to come into play, whether you're homeschooling, whether you're public schooling, whether you're doing a hybrid of both online, offline, whether you're doing some days in a classroom and some days at home, whether you're doing some biblical worldview or whether you're doing some secular classes. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you're involved, that you know what's going on, that you're sharing that learning experience with your child, not disconnected from it. So that way you know and they know that you both are learning something together. There's so much joy that you get from seeing that aha moment go off in your child's head, whether it's from like, hey mom, I just finished this math lesson and I got a 95. Like, that's never happened, or if it's like, hey mom, I just made bread, and I've never done that before, and you see them, their eyes light up. Like, that is such a joy to see your child learn and enjoy learning, and
You
that's the
bring up
whole goal.
Yeah, you bring up such an important point in that, a lot of new families, they come and like, I don't know that I can do this. And,
Hmm.
first things I say is no one has a more vested interest in the success of your child than you.
Right.
There are plenty of organizations in the world that will be happy to take on the ownership of educating your child.
Right.
Um, and so we'll leave it at that. But so no one is more empowered than you. You are the one that has raised them from when they were an infant, and you already understand more about their learning styles than you probably realize because you don't think of a lot of those things. And so that rolls right into what does a school day look like, for those
Right.
early homeschool parents. I don't think I want to sit down and get a pencil and paper and just start learning to read and write and do math. And that is in those early stages such a small fraction of the learning, because what you just described, whether it's we're going to measure the laundry soap and we're going to do a load of laundry together and we're going to talk about fractions when
Mm.
they're 4 years old. They know what half of a cup is, because
Hmm.
we know what half is. So all of those things are learning elements and opportunities throughout the day. And so early families, families early in the process, just need to recognize that the whole day is a homeschooling day, and it very seldom requires a sit down with a book and a pencil.
Exactly, which you bring up that point, and I'm glad that we're talking about this because there's been some discrepancy about the amount of hours that are required by homeschool students, especially in Tennessee. And what I just found out was there's actually a different amount of hours required if you're an independent student going through the state versus if you're a umbrella program or something else. You actually have to do less hours, which doesn't make sense to me, but you get to do less hours if you're an independent student versus if you're an umbrella student. Um, you have to check me on that, but that's what we just spoke about. There's a discrepancy of like 4 to 6 hours, which doesn't make sense, but we know, and you can write down a whole laundry list, like what Todd is saying that, okay, we did laundry today. That means we did math and we did science because we talked about the chemistry. And then we did dishes and we learned about hard work. That was physical education. Then maybe we went outside, we went for a walk. Like, that's also more physical education. We went to go get the mail and we learned about being responsible for our bills or whatever, and that was math. And so, we're going throughout the whole entire day, however many hours you're awake, that counts. So whether it's, oh, okay, well, it's 4 hours for them and 6 hours for me, or 6 hours for me and 4 hours for them, doesn't matter. What matters is that you got some learning done. And when you start breaking things
Mhm.
down, to like just the task itself, there is so much learning in that fine motor skills, fluency, critical thinking. And there's so many tasks that we don't even think about they're learning and they're picking up so much.
Well, it becomes a mindset thing. You're exactly right. There are some discrepancies. What we put in our handbook and what we require is 4 hours a day and 180 days. And so our umbrella program does require that, and that was from our understanding and reading of the Tennessee Code the way it's written. But you're right, because it's a mindset thing. It has to do with intentionality, and so part of that taking on ownership is you need to spend a few minutes saying, what is my day going to look like? And so, if you actually find yourself writing laundry, dishes, going to the mailbox, hey, we get to talk about traffic. We get to talk about addresses and maybe some geography. Well, now we can look at how the post office works and how they deliver mail. All sorts of things become possible when you think about everything you do becomes learning experience. And
Yes,
it's if you think about it for just a brief moment, it's hard to think how could any experience not be a learning opportunity? But
right.
it's a mindset change that's it's you just have to realize what's happening, and then the whole day you say, well, then isn't actually from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed school? Yes, it sure is.
Yeah,
And but it cannot be, it's just the same. It can also not be a school day if you're not intentional about the time that you're using. And so then it's a wasted day of sitting on the couch and watching cartoons or playing the video games on the tablet. It's just as easy to do that as well. So it's really
hmm,
about the mindset change and being intentional with the time. And frankly, the
yes.
gift we're given with the time we have, our children.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gaining, I think there was somebody that did a post about how many hours you gain with your child when you homeschool them. And for some parents, it's like, oh my gosh, that's more hours with my kid. But for many of us, it's like, no, we want that time with them. We want to like be able to influence them as much as we possibly can before they get dropped off out into the world to go fend for themselves, to pour in that wisdom so they have 2 feet to stand on. And that's really where, having a community, having people like yourself, and, umbrella programs like what you offer can help you build that community, that village to help support your student because it's not like you just come to it and you're on your own. You now have a whole village that's supporting you and encouraging you to keep going. I'm sure, do you guys have like a way that you can get the parents over like some of those hurdles when they deal with student issues on things?
Well, one of the things that we recommend is, as you're describing perfectly, is it's about as easy as it ever has been
Hmm.
to homeschool because the options and the resources that every family has is significant. So if they're basically what we try to encourage the family to do is number one, don't do this alone. As you point out, there's a village available, and a
Yes.
lot of folks are have the experience and some guidance and or maybe even more experienced than we are,
Right.
because they've either had more kids or they were spread out, and so they've got 20 years of experience, where we have 13 years of experience. So it doesn't matter, but get connected with a community,
Hmm.
and whether it's just simply play dates to start. Before you know it, you've got several families at the playground, and you're like, you know what, we should start a small co-op. And a co-op simply just means that the parents get together and say, you know what, I'll take English, I'll take math, and you don't have to plan the whole day anymore. You're taking on a single subject. Maybe you excel in a subject, maybe another parent excels in another subject. And not only now, you're building some socialization, and you're getting together a couple of days a week to work through lessons, and somebody can do the heavy lifting on a subject maybe you don't want to,
Right.
or have the experience in or not as comfortable with. And so
Hmm.
those kind of things are probably one of the first things that we recommend is get connected. Don't do it on your own. Some people enjoy that and say, I don't want anybody to mess with my day. I know what I want. I know how to plan a day. I know how to look at a textbook and divide it up over the year. Well, that's great. If that's you, there are lots of people that do want to do just that. But you don't have to do it alone. And that's what we try to let folks know about.
Absolutely. When I got started homeschooling, I had no idea what a co-op was. I had heard of like a theater co-op or something. I'm like, what is that? And I knew nothing. I'm like, oh, we're just gonna do school at home, like with the desks and the paper and like, our little chair desk thing. We even bought
Mhm.
some of like the vintage ones to bring out to home. And it just went horribly. It went horribly because that's not what homeschooling is. So I highly suggest you can actually if you don't have a community, you can connect with us at the Ultimate Homeschool Community. We have a network on Facebook. I can put that in the show notes below. And there's several others in each state they have. If you just type in social media, you will find them. They are everywhere, which is a good thing. But like you said, it can be as simple as, join with your friends down the street. You don't have to have a huge, massive group. We meet with just one other family and we do the main subjects together: math, writing, English, history, and we get all the maybe not so fun subjects done as a group. And then that leaves us more time for doing the fun subjects that we want to do. Or maybe that's more individualized. So there's so much to do. There's so much to explore and experience. And that's really what we're saying is like, get out there and go do it. I know there's probably going to be some more questions on what you offer or uh, how they can work with you. Where can they find you? What is the best way to connect? And I
Certainly.
know you've got a coupon you want to share about as well.
Absolutely. So I'll start with our website, which is accessacademy.org. And we are offering a promotion for our podcast today. And so that'll be 20% off our umbrella registration for the coming year. And so if you want to visit accessacademy.org/ultimate homeschool, you can get a free get a coupon code for that 20% off. And if you would like to just simply ask some questions, you can reach us by our email at info@accessacademy.org. And of course, you can also give us a call at 865-269-7500.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Todd, it has been such a pleasure having you come on. And we didn't even talk about all the other classes that you also teach, which I would love for some insight for our listeners on another episode. But this has been such a pleasure sharing with you and learning more about Access Academy. And definitely for those that are wanting to get started, a coupon code is always the way to go. So make sure you go and check that out, even just to look around and see if it's an option for you. And if there is one last word of advice that you can give to our parents that are looking at homeschooling or looking at umbrella program, what would you say is like your number one top piece of advice?
Well, it probably seems a little cliche, but the short one is you can do it. Once you recognize that there's more to education than just, um, you know, years ago, it's not as much often, but putting your child on that yellow thing and they go away for most of the day. Once you recognize that there's more to education than that, we're here to support you discover the fact that you can do it. And so don't hesitate because you think you can't. Give us a call and we'd be glad to just talk through what does a day look like? What does a day have to look like? And so we want to support you in that choice.
Awesome. I concur. I think that's a great piece of advice too, because a lot of times we feel like we can't when we really, really can. So thank you so much for joining and happy homeschooling, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me on the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. Before you go, though, don't miss out. Check those show notes down below so you can get those exclusive freebies and helpful resources and some practical tips that we've been sharing to support your homeschool journey. If you found value in today's episode, which I'm sure you have, please, please, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, share it with another parent who needs it. The more reviews and comments that we get, the more parents we can reach with the support they need. And so your next step towards confident homeschooling is literally just a click away. Just check below. So just check out those notes and we'll see you next time.